for too. It's for all of us to sort of, in some sense, get immersed, get familiar with the topic, the challenge that each of our classes in different ways is working on together. And so our program for today is an opportunity for us to meet all the faculty members, 10 of which you probably don't know, or at least are not in class with, and then hear from community members and activists, people who are working on the topic of food and food justice in Dayton, to give us a strong sense of the work they do, why they're doing it, the challenge, the obstacles, as well as the path forward, at least the path as far as they've seen it. And then towards the end, we will get together, we will mix you up, we will be mixed up in small teams with students from other classes to get a sense of what it is we've learned even here to try to, again, sort of project into the future. So that's what we've got in store. We do appreciate you being here. I mean, and I'll say, without offering this as an option, this is sort of a floating space, so you come and go. Hopefully maybe someone is going to come late and they can join and you catch them up, but this is sort of what we're doing here. Is there anything else to add, Kevin?
No.
I should introduce myself. Well, maybe I'll start then, because we're doing faculty intros. My name is Joel Proust. I teach in the Department of Political Science and the Human Rights Studies program. I'm also affiliated at the Human Rights Center, where I lead a program called the Moral Courage Project. I'm teaching Introduction to Human Rights this semester in the GEMnasium. That is HRS 200. Where are the HRS 200s at? All right, sprinkled around. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Hallinan. I am in mechanical engineering. I am teaching ME 460 along with my peer.
I'm Kim Bigelow. I'm also teaching a section of 460.
In here in the GEMnasium. Our emphasis really on the food justice problem is in workforce development around this theme. Next up.
Hi everyone, I'm Zach Peiso. I am an environmental philosopher teaching an environmental ethics class. I see my students here. Thank you all for coming. I sort of see our niche, and the niche of environmental philosophy is giving voice and recognition to environmental values that are oftentimes left out of environmental management and policy decisions. And since everyone's working on that, and especially thinking about food justice, one of the specific things we'll be attending to is the values of the interests of non-human organisms that are involved or are part of food systems, and how we can be respectful to non-human organisms that are parts of those systems.
Marianne.
I'm Marianne Engel. I'm teaching 3 sections of SSC 200. And here my SSC 200 class is Deconstructing Dinner, How and Why We Eat As We Do. And my students are going to be kind of directly addressing ways to help children eat more healthy. They're going to be kind of looking at some of the challenges that sometimes stop people from eating healthy, and attempting to come up with modules in an after-school program to try to educate kids about healthy eating.
Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Potter. I'm teaching with a few others. I don't. Is Mary Ellen here? I don't know if she's here yet.
Nope.
Introduction to Sustainability. I see some current students and some former students. We're going to culminate the class in a solutions project where the students develop ways to address the grand challenge in the Dayton community, finding ways to make our food system more just and more resilient.
Glenna.
I'm Glenna Jennings. I teach in the Department of Art and Design. My courses on social practice have been working with food justice and with some of the people that you'll be hearing from later for a couple years now. And around on the tables you can see scattered some magazines that are the product of our most recent Dinner in the Desert Kitchen. And they are a community partnership raising awareness about food justice, food insecurity. However, this semester I teach BAP 320, which is studio practice, and it is a studio-based lighting course. And we're going to look at how food has been represented, still live food, for commercial purposes, cultural purposes, how it even overshadows certain economic and political situations. So, what I want from anybody in this class, if you have a story or you have data and you think, how can we visualize this in an interesting way? How can we problematize this? How could art lend itself to this? Bring it to us. We are sort of a receptacle at this point. You bring us your ideas, and we have the creative and skilled students that can create something for you.
Castell.
I'm Castell Sweet, Coordinator, Community Engaged Learning Scholarship in the Fit Center for Leadership and Community. And I coordinate the semester service program. So there will be 10 students this semester who will be working with 10 different nonprofits in the Dayton area. All of them directly working on other topics, various topics, but in some sort of way that will touch on food. So they'll be trying to incorporate and share some of those stories and experiences with you this semester.
Chris and Mallory.
I'm Chris Harrison. I am a courtesy faculty member and educator for the Freedom Enterprises class, and I will be up talking and tell you a little bit about more what we do and what I do.
Mallory?
Hi, I'm Mallory Redmond. This is Evelyn. She doesn't always come to class, but she is here today. I work with City Church Dayton, downtown here, and the Miami Valley Life Alliance, and I'm working with the Freedom Enterprise course.
Sandy last, I think. Castell. Oh, Kelly, so sorry.
So I'm Sandy Furter, and I'm teaching the Systems Engineering course, and it's a grad course. And my graduate student here is Caleb Walter, so I don't forget him. What we're going to be trying to do is to do systems modeling with the community partners, so we see how all of the different community partners that Kevin has identified kind of connect to each other, or maybe don't connect to each other, what kind of services they provide. So we're trying to see the kind of the big picture of how all of these interactions will happen.
Kelly.
Hey, I'm Kelly Johnson, and I teach in the Department of Religious Studies. I have 3 sections of REL 363 meeting here this semester, so those are faith and justice sections. We do a lot of looking at competing accounts of justice, and so I'm hoping that we can learn from and participate in what's going on here this semester by investigating. You may have noticed that in the United States and in Ohio and in the city of Dayton, there are some seriously different ideas about what justice means. And sometimes people talking across each other, not even able to engage each other at all when they start arguing about what it would mean to have a just food economy. So I'm hoping that my students by the end of the semester will be producing some proposals to contribute to building a culture of justice where there are some shared bases for talking about what it would mean to build a just and resilient community food system. And I can, just a word, Yana Bennett isn't able to be here at the moment, but she's teaching a couple of sections of Christian ethics and healthcare. I don't know what you guys are doing, but I know that it has something to do with the relationship of health and food justice. So.
Great. For people who are standing, we left open a lot of space to be sitting on the floor up front, so feel free to come forward, okay? The speakers that we'll have shortly will just be right in the center, okay? So come on forward if you wish. People in the back, come on, come on, come on. There are still a few seats around. There's one right there, one over there. So as you're coming in, I just want to point out something. There was a survey this last year from the American Association of Colleges and Universities that asked employers how important it is for students to work together across disciplines. And something like 90% of them said, very important. In response, they were asked, how many of you think this is happening and that universities are being successful in doing this? And the response was, not at all. This class is really unique and unusual. I hope you understand. We have 14 classes all coming together to address a common theme from a lot of disciplines. And the real intent is for us to learn from each other. All right? So, 4 speakers. Really, to get this semester started, what is this challenge that we're looking at? I'm just going to introduce them individually, all together at the beginning. So, we have Etana Jacobi. She is the manager of the Whole Hunger Institute, of course. Looking at systemic, citywide solutions for that are about food security and access to food in our community. We have Etana Jacobi, who is with an organization called Citywide. It's a governmental partnership between Montgomery County, right? No.
No, we used to be, originally we were part of the city. Now we are a totally independent entity that does community and economic development.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it was partnership between Montgomery and city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone thinks that.
So, Caitlin, your title always eludes me. So.
Planner and community organizer.
Yeah. So, a lot of development downtown Citywide is actually very, very instrumental in that process. We have Amaha Sellassie. He is what is he calls himself a community researcher. He's a professor at Sinclair Community College, but also he's been incredibly active and providing a leadership role in creating Gem City Market in North Dayton to bring a grocery to a place that has none. And last is, who am I missing? Oh, yeah. So Chris Harrison, one of our courtesy faculty, is really going to be talking about justice from the perspective of an organization that is called Miami Valley Lifelines, which he'll speak more of. But it's really about a pathway from out of addiction, incarceration, generational poverty into the world. So with that said, who do you want first? You're the best to start, Etana. Yeah. So we have a microphone. Is everybody hearing? People in the back?
It's hard to hear under the...
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So I use this.
Okay.
I also have an old teacher voice. Can folks hear me okay?
Right. Just it's the one area.
Can you hear me okay in the back?
Can, but this
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Hi. My name. Could this help at all? This one?
No.
Great. Well.
Oh. Got it? Okay.
Hello. Still nothing. Hello. Hello.
You live? Oh, one last introduction.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mike Puckett of IACT is here. Mike? Basically, this craziness was designed for IACT, our Institute for Applied Creativity and Transformation. In fact, Mike designed this space. Okay.
Hello. Great. I apologize to those of you who are looking mostly at my back. I will try to make sure you can also see my face. My name is Etana. I work at the Hall Hunger Initiative. The Hall Hunger Initiative started about 3 years ago. It was founded by Ambassador Tony Hall, who is the former congressman for this area. Tony served the Dayton area for about 24 years in Congress and then went on to represent the United States at the UN, advocating for hunger issues throughout his entire career. And about 3 years ago, there were some really devastating statistics that came out. And I don't know how much background information you all have on food or the food crisis that Dayton is facing. But a few years ago, Dayton was ranked second in the nation for food hardship amongst families with children. So almost a third of families with children in Dayton do not have access to the food that they need to survive and to thrive. And Tony thought that this can't happen in my backyard, this can't happen in my hometown, I need to do something about it. So he started the Hall Hunger Initiative. So our work at HHI is designed to work with our partners, that's why I was chatting up all the folks in the back, to leverage the power of community assets to figure out how we can build a sustainable and just community food system here in the Miami Valley that provides good food for all. And we think that that is incredibly important because we know that our food system currently does not provide good food for all. Almost the entire northwest side of Dayton is considered a food desert, and there's a USDA definition that I'm sure you might get into with some of your classes, but essentially what you need to know is a food desert is a place with low income area, and there's literally no access to high quality affordable food. There's no full service grocery store. So low income, low access. That's what you need to remember for a food desert. And I'm sure my colleague Amaha will talk about this later when he's talking about the Gem City market. But something really important to note as we're looking at these issues, as we're looking at coming up with solutions and really investigating these challenges in the community, is that inequity and the inequity that exists in our community was by design. So I have this technology, but I don't have a PowerPoint, and I believe Kevin is going to send it out to the classes. But there's some really important images that I want you to look at and that I hope you dig into over the next several weeks and months throughout your courses. Has anyone ever heard of the concept of redlining? Great! Who wants to tell everyone what redlining is? Yeah, Vince.
Oh boy. Okay. So back in the 40s when people were applying for loans for houses, the government's like, okay, white people, you get loans. Black people, you don't. So black people had to go through crappy neighborhoods, and they were stuck there, well, basically till now. Till 70s, I think, right?
Kind of. Thank you, Vince.
That was really bad. Really
I appreciate
shitty.
that. Give Vince a round of applause for being bold in the first student to speak. Thank you. Thank you, Vince. So in 1934, the Federal Housing Act was established, which created the Federal Housing Administration. So for those of you who don't remember, the Great Depression, really not great economic situation. So the New Deal was a suite of policy changes that were designed to spur the economy, make things better for folks. And when you really dig into what the impacts of the New Deal were, you see that a lot of these progressive policies mostly benefited white folks. They were explicitly designed to benefit some and not others, and create opportunity for some and not others. And redlining is a big part of that, and it's a big part of Dayton's history, and it's a big part of why our food landscape looks the way that it does. So in 1934, this was established. In 1937, a map was created that you all have access to. You can also just Google Dayton redlining map, and it'll come right up, where different neighborhoods were given different grades. So an A grade is green. It's like, this is a great place. You should totally invest here. B was blue, C was yellow, and D was red. And an area that was redlined often meant that black folks lived in that community, and the government decided that those folks were not willing or not worthy of the federal government's investment in a backing of a loan. And if you think about the American dream, and if you think about access to opportunity, most folks think about a white picket fence and a house of your own. So the American dream was only accessible to certain people in the community on the basis of race, but also it drove investment in certain areas and not others. So not only could you get a mortgage in those areas, but people weren't developing in those areas. So we disinvested from communities for generations, and that has huge impacts when we talk about grocery stores. Because where is someone going to build a grocery store? An area where they can make a high profit margin because there's wealth concentrated in that area, or one where they can make very little profit, and grocery stores operate on very thin margins. So I raise all of this because Kevin asked me, what does HHI do? What is the greatest challenge that we see our community face with if we're looking at building a sustainable and just community food system? And what is the ideal of ideal?
Yeah.
The ideal of ideal for Dayton. So I think that you know what HHI does, right? I didn't even tell you. I just said who Tony was. We work in the community with our partners to create the system by elevating the issue, which is why I'm here today, to add capacity. So that's why we're so supportive of the Gem City market and helping get the money that's needed to raise those funds, and to work with others and bring people to the table to come up with solutions. So I think the greatest challenge that our community faced with is our history of disinvestment and redlining. And I think the ideal of ideal is creating a community food system in the Miami Valley that provides good food for all by centering our ideas and our solutions on those that are most affected by these issues. So if we're going to build better structures, we need to make sure that those that were left out of the conversation when these oppressive structures were created are the ones that are driving the solutions for them. And I know that you all are going to have interesting conversations with each other and with your faculty to drive towards that. And Ajanti, did you get introduced yet? No? Ajanti is doing really great work as a grad assistant at the Fit Center, collecting people's stories that have experienced structural injustices as it relates to food. And I highly recommend connecting with her in your work as you come up with solutions and move forward.
Next Next up, Amaha Sellassie.
You want to put the camera in front?
Yeah. Can you go to that side? Yeah. Right beside. Yeah. Thank you.
I do?
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody? Good. Good. I think kind of to leave off where kind of started. So we looked at when looking at food systems, or look at underlying causes, right? We talked about redlining, and so does anybody know like what is this distinct thing about Dayton? Like what characterizes Dayton? If you're looking at geography, this, that, and other, there's something that stands out. What would be?
West side versus east side?
Yeah, west side versus east side. Or I wouldn't say the verse necessarily, but I would say the river, right? So the river separates east from west, right? With the east side being primarily white, 94%, and then you have a Turkish community, Latino community, and some African refugees, and then 98% of all African Americans that live in Dayton live on the west side, right? On the surface, that shouldn't matter, right? But as we learned from those events, that is the product of redlining. And so what happens is that we've had continuous disinvestment on one part of the town, namely west side, which is now translated today as opportunity gaps, meaning opportunity means conditions favorable for the attainment of goal. And in Dayton, west side has experienced low and very low opportunity. So in 2015, these maps were created by the Curricular Institute and Montgomery County Public Health that kind of explored how's opportunity distributed in the area. And we're looking at housing, access to food, access to health care, jobs, social capital or connectivity. Predominantly all of the west side was considered low and very low, which is the exact pattern of the redlining maps. And so at that time, a group of us came together and we called a meeting at a church to tell the community. And the interesting thing about it was it wasn't that like when the maps came out, it wasn't, how do I say it? It wasn't like, oh my goodness, you live in an area that's low opportunity. You know what I mean? That wasn't the reaction, right? The reaction was, yes, now our experience is being verified by data, right? And so we called this meeting to talk about it, and out of that, a group came together to kind of say like, hey, we had this idea of, well, if you live in a food desert, like, what would it be like to open up a grocery store? And we're kind of like, man, I don't know, because nobody's ever done that before, and everybody thought we were crazy, but we kind of just walked it out over the next couple of years, and that's kind of what gave birth to what is now Co-op Dayton, which is an incubator, which then the first project being incubated is a Gem City Market, which will be a full-service grocery store. I kind of liken it to Trader Joe's. That'll be off of Salem Avenue, 300 block of Salem Avenue. So it's in Northwest Dayton, which is part of the food desert. So we're going to have fresh fruits and vegetables. We're going to have a teaching kitchen, so we can learn how to cook different foods and try different things. And if you want to sell products, it's a commercial kitchen, so you can do that as well. So you can build economy. And we're going to have a health food store. Not health food store. We're going to have a health clinic as well, where we can meet health foods in the community. I think the important thing about the market is its self-determination, right? So it's a co-op, so it's community-owned and operated, right? Right now we have over 2,000 members. We're striving to get 3,000 members by the time we open up next year. But it's a thing of what the community can do for themselves, right? For ourselves, instead of waiting for other people. Because when you're looking at redlining and the effects of redlining, you're looking at literally two distinct areas. Like it's not just like the river. It's this interesting barrier where like the ecosystem is just completely different, right? It's like the two distinct places of being. I don't know how to fully explain it, where you have concentrated advantage and concentrated disadvantage, right? And so what can we do as residents to impact that and not waiting for other people, right? Because we've been talking about it being a food desert, but I like the term of food apartheid, right? Because it implies that it's not a natural phenomenon, but it's the result of policy, right? Which is like structural violence, meaning that the policies themselves create harm on individuals. So like, does everybody know that life expectancy is determined by zip code, right? Your zip code in Dayton can have 6 years difference in life, depending on where your zip code is, right? And so it's like all these things are results of policies that have accumulated over the years. And so what can be done to change that? And so Gem City Market, in the process of building the grocery store, our main thing has been on building relationships, right? Connectivity, you know what I mean? We're focusing on critical connections more than critical mass, right? How to bring people together, how to build trust, right? We know that the strength of our community is going to be the strength of our relationships, right? And so what can we do to work together to solve our own problems, which is like collective hope, meaning that you see a problem, you have a vision of what it can be, you can reimagine, or moral imagination, however you want to say it, like the community that you want to work, live, and play in, right? But then you know that you have the power, the ability to change it, to transform it, to make it happen, to birth it out, you know what I mean? In collectiveness, like working with others, right? And so this is like, the market is bigger than anything I've ever done before, right? It's $4.2 million, but like in the scheme of things, you know what I mean? It's still 4.5. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, it's kind of gone up, and we can look at the political situation right now. You might go figure out why it went up in price. But either way, it's like it's not huge, you know what I mean? But it's enough to give us hope that like yeah, as we do this, we can do other things, because like people have been coming from all over the community to help, right, and to see how they can do a fundraiser, or how they can knock on doors, you know what I mean? Because even like our whole campaign has been about how to build deep relationship in the community. So like we don't knock on doors like canvassing, like okay, I don't know, how many here has ever done political canvassing before? Anybody? Like what's kind of the goal? Like what do you have to do when you political canvass? Like speed wise.
Like get votes or get money.
Okay, get votes, get money, and like you have to knock on like so many doors per hour, right? So like you gotta knock on 30 doors or something like that. Like we have a whole different approach, right? Because we want to do deep listening inside the community, right? And so it's like if we spend an hour at a door, that's great, you know what I mean? Because we develop a solid relationship with one family, one member in the community, right? So like we're kind of reversing what is normal, because we can't get to different places doing the same processes that got us here in the first place, right? And so I would say one of our biggest challenges, besides the food access itself, actually, we kind of talked about this. So what does it mean if you live in an area that's a food apartheid or a food desert in Dayton? Does anybody know, like, how do you acquire your food?
Typically, you go to small convenience stores.
Yeah, you can go to small convenience stores, right? Family Dollar, local corner store, right? Which is going to have high fructose, high processed food. If you have a banana, how much does a banana cost in the food desert? Anybody know?
80 cents?
Yeah, 80 cents, right? And that's actually kind of lower, right? Because oftentimes it's $1, you know what I mean? So it's like $1 for one banana. If I go to Kroger's, how much is a bushel or a pound of bananas? Yeah, on sale 29 cents. Like 49, 59 cents for a group of bananas. But in the food desert, it's $1. So it shows how food is actually costs more in areas that have less than it does in other areas. And so if you don't want to take that option, right, but you don't have transportation, then you have to take the bus, right? How many buses do you think it takes to get to Kroger's? Oh, let me back it up. For all of West Dayton, 40,000 plus residents, we have one grocery store, Kroger's on Siegenthaler, right? So how do I get to Kroger's if I don't have transportation? Bus, right? How many buses does it take to get there? Typically. 2 buses, right? So I need to take a bus from where I'm at, downtown, get my transfer, go up, grab my food, get back on the bus, go downtown, take my transfer, and get back. So about how much time does that take? Yeah, 2 to 3 hours, right? And that's it. And then we have to factor in how much food do I need to get, right? Like how large is my family? Do I need to take multiple people with me to make this trip, or do I make multiple trips per week, or So all these things that like if you're living in a food, you have to navigate. You have to think more about like how you get access to your food. And if you're working 2 jobs, and if you don't have the 3-hour time slot to do that, then you just resort to going to where? The corner store, right? You know what I mean? So I would say that's definitely part of the major issue, especially when it revolves around food. But I think also looking at internalized oppression, right? Because oftentimes West Side is looked down upon to the extent that it gets internalized, that like it's less on the West Side, right? That like it's not as good, right? And so like I think that is an underlying issue that stems, that coincides with food access, coincides with all these things. Is an underlying thing of how to know that like we are the ones we've been waiting for, right? That we have the power, we have the assets, we have the ability, you know what I mean, to create the change that we want to see. So I think my hope is how to access the gifts and talents of the community, how to build deeper levels of trust, because communities move on the speed of trust, right? So like how we build the deeper relationships, how do we make the issue known? Because there's a Frontline documentary that came out a couple months ago, and it was interesting for me because like after I watched it, I looked at the city differently. That first day when I was driving, I was like, damn, I didn't see the city like this before. I was trying to just walk around. And the thing that I realized is that like we've actually normalized a food desert. Like we think that's just the way it's supposed to be. Oh yeah, 40,000 people in one grocery store, that's just the way it's supposed to be. Right? So as a community, we've normalized that as like acceptable. But it's not. It's not acceptable anywhere. You know what I mean? You go to other parts of communities, there's 3 or 4 major grocery stores within a mile of each other. There's 2 Krogers within a mile of each other in some places, right? And so it's like, why is West Dayton, is that acceptable? You know what I mean? And so I think like challenging these issues, looking how to build relationships, community gardens, right? Like what can we do to create self-sustaining communities that practice food sovereignty, meaning that like they have greater control over their access to food.
Etana Jacobi, Citywide. Chris, your cleanup.
Hi, like he said, my name is Caitlin. I work with an organization called Citywide Development, which has came up before. We're a community and economic development entity that is not part of the city, although we do work closely with the city of Dayton a lot. And we do a little bit of everything. We do real estate finance and development, we do small business lending, we do holistic community development projects, which means we'll work in a neighborhood or a series of neighborhoods with partners for 10 or 15 years to help support residents and partners in thinking about how to grow or change their neighborhood. And we're a community development financial institution, which means that we can bring in money and lend it out in the same way that a bank does, but we're able to lend it into underserved areas and in more creative ways. So we can lend to people that a bank would not either be willing to or would not be able to because of high risk, or in an area that traditionally is hard to get financing in. And I do sort of a combo of, I do half community development, in which I work in 5 neighborhoods in West Dayton on the ground with residents, and I do half fund development for our CDFI. And I want to say that thinking about those 2 things together, I think is really important, because in food work or in anything else, so often the people who have access to funding and can decide funding, especially non-grant funding, so lending or other financing, have no connection to folks on the ground. So I think in food work, as in much of community work, thinking about how to connect residents with investment opportunities is important. And so not just connecting, but how can residents have more control over what's happening in their community, have more access to financing, those sorts of things. And thinking specifically about food and challenges, I think Etana and Amaha covered sort of the big one, which is that food, like any other societal challenge that we see, like education and housing and all of these things, is undergirded by decades, if not centuries, of intentional structural racism that has shaped our communities. And so you can't talk about food or any of these issues without talking about that and thinking about that. And on top of that, I think with food specifically, one of the challenges you see is how challenging it is to be impactful as a local player in food. You know, food, our agricultural and food systems moved over the course of the 20th century from a much more diversified system that had a lot of smaller farms, a lot of smaller producers, that was a little bit more local and regionally focused, to, you know, something in which it's internationally focused, it's not even national. A couple of years ago, the USDA did a census, put out a census that said that 55% of U.S. farmland is controlled by 4% of farmers. So that's half of the farmland in the United States is controlled by what I'm willing to bet are large conglomerates, not individual farmers. And I think that just characterizes the entire food system, which is that at every level it is controlled by a couple of large entities. There's 10 major food distribution companies that, you know, places like Nestle and Coca-Cola, that control much of the food growing, production, distribution around the world. And so what is grown, where it is grown, how it is grown, who the government subsidizes and how it subsidizes it, a lot of that is controlled by major international food companies and what they want to see. They get to decide where the food goes, who gets to eat it, where grocery stores open. They have a lot of influence over things like that. And so food, which is something that is inherently personal, it is inherently local and cultural and individual. It's where so much of community building happens around the table. So much of a culture and an individual place is its food and the local flavor of that food. You know, this is something, it's almost entirely controlled in many ways by these large corporations that are totally at a different level than a community. And so thinking about how can local players have an impact on that? How can they, in cases like Gem City, how can they sort of wrest control away and start to make their own decisions about what is being grown and what is happening in stores? How can they own those stores? I think the other challenge is that is just how hard it is in this particular industry. I mean, I think Amaha talked a little bit about, you know, challenges with prices in stores in West Dayton. The reason that a lot of stores in West Dayton sell a banana for $1 is because the owner of that store went to Costco last week and bought 10 bananas for 55 cents, and he's got to make a profit. Otherwise, his store goes out of business, right? He can't afford, he has one store, he sells 10 bananas in a week, he can't buy wholesale. So he can't purchase food at the same price that a Kroger can purchase food. And I think at every level, these small enterprises, whether it's small urban agricultural enterprises, whether it's these smaller stores, it is so much, it's so challenging for them to make money off of this. And you find when you talk to folks who own local stores in West Dayton, one of the challenges, we've worked with some of the corner stores to talk to them about how can we diversify what's in your store. If we have some grant funding, can you buy more produce? Can you do X, Y, and Z? And they say, we make all of our money off of liquor and cigarettes. They don't make any money off bananas. They don't make any money off of, you know, the staples that we think of as healthy food. And so without outside funding, without someone going to do that for them, it's really challenging. They also have low capacity. Probably there's one manager in the store who is in the store all day. He might not have the ability to, you know, plan and think ahead about how to, you know, which things to purchase and make a plan that allows him to make a profit off of his store using healthy food, using other types of food. So, I mean, just thinking about local actors in the food system and some of the challenges they face, I think there's a lot of barriers. And the tools that we have to deal with, you know, I think about we're a local financing institution. We can lend money to folks, but in order to lend money to people in a traditional way, people have to have insurance on their building, which a lot of times insurance companies won't insure buildings in high-risk areas with high crime. They have to have traditional books, which the store owner may or may not have the ability or the capacity to keep that. They may not have enough of a profit margin to take on debt. So if they want to expand their store, they may not be able to take out a loan. They might not be eligible, even if we're willing to take on a lot of risk. So just when I think about, you know, I think the food system is a system that is inherently controlled really far away from the ground by a few people. And I think that the barriers, even when people do try to enter that system and start a co-op to start smaller urban agricultural enterprises, they're high. And so when I think about what is the ideal, I think it's something where we have a system in Dayton where we don't just have a few individual enterprises popping up to try to grow food or to sell food, but where we have a system where people are talking to each other and supporting each other. It's a system where the folks in Dayton have economic power, so it's not just, it's not other farmers profiting, it's people in Dayton are making money off of this. It's not just a nonprofit selling food, but it's people growing the food are paid by that food. People in the community are purchasing it, they're helping to decide what it is. It's scalable, so it's not just a few community gardens here and there. It's something that is long-term, it's systemic, it's sustainable, and it's built by the people on the ground, not in another community somewhere. So, thank you.
So our last speaker is Chris Harrison from actually many places. I'll let him explain.
How's it going? Good. Wow, that was a delay. My name is Chris Harrison. Like I said earlier, I am a courtesy faculty member for the Freedom Enterprise class. I'm also one of the co-founders of City Church Dayton and Miami Valley Life Alliance. And I spend most of my time now, I'm a partner in a smaller development group. We focus on hospitality and wellness concepts. Two of our main concepts we have in existence in downtown Dayton now are Table 33. It's a restaurant on the corner of 2nd and Wilkinson. And then we also have Body Garage Dayton, which is a wellness concept that focuses on some more Eastern modalities paired with high-tech equipment. So some really cool stuff. Kind of the thing that brings all of those things together would be Miami Valley Life Alliance. So a little bit about Miami Valley Life Alliance. It's a anti-poverty movement, and our main focus on poverty is to expand the conversation of what poverty looks like. Through any type of justice, for me, especially being a white, middle-class male, awareness is one of the #1 issues. I grew up very unaware, and I'm still unaware in certain things. How many of you have learned something new today already? Right? So you're already more aware now than you were an hour ago, right? So there's a lot of room for awareness. Miami Valley Life Alliance, one of the things we want to bring awareness to is how poverty is understood. A lot of people view poverty as a financial conversation, and for us, a person's life is made up of way more than finances. So we've broken a person's life down to what we call 5 capitals. That would be financial, physical, intellectual, relational, and spiritual. So what we're proposing is that anyone and everyone probably has some level of poverty in any or multiple areas of their life. You tracking with me? Those 5 things, right? And for us, what that does is it takes the conversation, and instead of it being an us or an us and a them, it makes it a we conversation, right? So I might have a little more money than the next guy, but I might be relationally bankrupt or might be physically bankrupt, spiritually, so on and so forth. How Miami Valley Life Alliance and all of those other things connect with the GEMnasium is through our Freedom Enterprise class. What we're trying to do with Freedom Enterprise is create essentially a labor force development piece that focuses on hospitality, farming, and wellness. So right now in our Freedom Enterprise class, we are focusing on what we're calling Hospitality House. And Etana spoke to what classifies a food desert is lack of income, lack of access. And so what we want to do through the Hospitality House is, one, take people who normally wouldn't be given an opportunity in a professional environment and give them training and educate them to do what we consider to be a viable career opportunity in hospitality. Most people in the Midwest don't look at hospitality as a career opportunity. It's more of a means to an end. But we really think there's something really special and foundational about the idea of hospitality, because at its roots, it's serving people. So we're developing this Hospitality House with our Freedom Enterprise class, and through that, as we take on hospitality professionals and culinary professionals and so on and so forth, one, we're increasing income. Our goal with this Hospitality House is not to just, we'll work with anyone who has passion or interest in this industry, but our goal is to work with previously incarcerated and opiate addicts. Obviously, we all know that Montgomery County and the Dayton area is just swarmed with overdoses and opiate addiction, and we think those two arenas are two groups of people that have been marginalized and not giving a fair shot. So that's where we want to focus our hospitality training efforts, is into those two demographics. Ultimately we'll take and train anyone, but that's where we want to put our focus. One, because we're putting income back into these food desert communities, and then also we're educating them on food, how to handle food, and then we're also working on growing food in these communities. So right now, one of the pieces with Miami Valley Life Alliance is we're working on propping up some hydroponic gardens to where we go into these neighborhoods, teach them, help them grow this hydroponic system, and then use concepts like Table 33 to be an immediate source of income for these gardens. So not only are we teaching them how to grow for themselves and for their community, but we're also immediately pouring income into these little gardens through using our hospitality concepts. So a lot of exciting stuff. It's been a whirlwind of a couple years, just jumping back into the city of Dayton and doing this. We're super excited and really honored to be here and be part of the GEMnasium.
Would all the speakers come back up to the front? Maybe we'll do this instead. We are thrilled by your turnout, but the idea of breaking you into teams of 4 right now seems overwhelming.
Yeah.
But maybe we could do some categories. So if the speakers will come up, I will speak louder and look closer to the microphone. Thanks. And I don't need to even be holding this. What I'd like to do, I think, is we can bring chairs up for you. We can bring chairs. So I think maybe we'll spend like 10 or 15 minutes. We'll just see how this goes. And maybe we can facilitate some conversation among the speakers and between them and you. Well, why don't we just open it up? Does anybody would anybody like to start us off with a question? Something to follow up on, something to push somebody on? Vince.
For Chris, what is the hospitality? What is a hospitality worker? What do they do?
So traditionally hospitality, you're looking at restaurants, bars,
Hotels. Those are the typical hospitality environments. So for us, that is front of house work, which would be hosting, serving, busing, and then back of house as well, which is all your culinary and stuff like that. That's kind of our main focus, is the restaurant environment at this point.
Thank you. No other question? Yeah.
What are some of the biggest things that you guys need help with as an organization?
So the question was, what are some of the biggest things, this is from Sam in Engineering Analysis, what are some of the biggest things that any of our speakers and our organizations could use help with? And from whom?
So I was murmuring to Caitlin because Caitlin and I are working with a group of stakeholders. Right now at the table is Public Health, the City of Dayton, Montgomery County, Citywide Development, the Food Bank, and the Hall Hunger Initiative. And there are a variety of stakeholders that are coming into that conversation, but this has just been the pre-planning group. And we are trying to come up with a food plan for this region. Like, what are we actually going to do? So we're talking about all these things, and we talk about where we want to go, but how are we actually going to get there? And I was intrigued that you are in engineering analysis. Yep. Is that mean he's in your class?
No.
No? Whose class?
He's in mine.
Okay, your class. So maybe my idea about you is misled, but I'm still really excited you're asking this question. So for folks in your class, great. And who's ever's class? Caitlin and I like kind of locked eyes with her when you were talking about what it is that your students are going to be looking at, because we need help figuring out all of the different players in the ecosystem. So Caitlin did an excellent job of talking about how diverse our, both concentrated and diverse our food system is, right? So if you just think about what you had for breakfast, like how many countries were involved in getting that food to your table? How many different logistics companies were involved? Who were the workers? How are they paid? All of those kinds of things are big questions that we have to think about if we're looking at a sustainable and just community system or a just and reliant community food system. So we need help figuring out who the different players are and actually starting to map that out. And then we also need help looking at all the places that we currently have food resources. So if I am in need of food and I want to be able to get food, what does that mechanism look like? So UD students have started to work on this and some UD professors have supported in this research, but right now Premier Health and Dayton Children's are screening people for food security when they're in their hospitals and in their patient clinics. Then what? If you actually are food insecure, what are the resources that are available and what is a system that can constantly update itself so that we don't have to keep going through and calling as nonprofit people like, okay, are your pantry hours the same? And what does this look like? Like how can we create systems and tools to help people access the things that they need and help us figure out what does the landscape look like? I would also add to that when I think about a lot of the food work that happens, which I want to emphasize first that I think it's good and necessary work and people are doing good things, but a lot of it is does not end up, it doesn't lead to jobs, it doesn't lead to economic power for people in the community. It's nonprofits bringing in food, it's government programs bringing in food, and all of that is necessary. But if we want to get to a place where we have a sustainable system, we need food to be part of the economy. We need enterprises where people are making money off of this, where people who are profiting off of this they live in the community and they're controlling some of this. I think Gem City is a really cool example of where that's going, but it's one store, and I think we need to think about, when I think about a lot of the groups that I work with, one example is the Edgemont Solar Garden. They have an indoor garden. They have the facility to grow year-round. It, for a variety of reasons, has been dormant for several years, but the neighborhood is interested in starting it back up, so they're looking at it. It is, right now, it's totally volunteer run. They're trying to figure it out. They definitely need capacity and support in that, but their dream long-term is that is a self-sustaining enterprise. So right now, it's grant-funded. They have people like Citywide, an organization called Homeful, supporting them, but eventually, they want to be able to grow food that they can sell to residents and to local enterprises like Gem City, like Table 33, and like sell that food and support their own gardeners so that people are making money off of that, and it's something that is self-sustaining. And so I think there's organizations and entities and ideas like that all over Dayton, and I think thinking about how to make them self-sustaining and to make sure that they're coming from the community and they're directed by the community is really important.
Yeah, the question seems kind of simple, but the more I'm thinking about it, that's kind of a harder question. So one of the things I think is interesting about food and working around food is that it's an easy on-ramp into like community organizing, because it's like everybody can agree and like people have access to food and these things, and it's an easier conversation to have other conversations. And so one thing that we're moving deeper into is that, so I'm a community-based, like, just sort of researcher, and so, like, my research is in the community, with the community, so, like, building power with instead of power over. And part of that is, like, developing, lack of a better word, lay researchers, or, like, how to, like, develop researchers inside the community that can, like, help identify what questions to ask, what problems to be solved, and this, that, and the other, because, like, to Etana's point, like, people that are having the experience understand the system the best, right? And so it's like they should be like at the center of policy development and this, that, and the other. And so going along the systems theme, I would say like helping us develop some of these systems to help capture this data, developing systems to capture. I think the main thing right now is like capturing these stories and seeing how these stories can be used as the basic for public policy, and I would 100% agree with building this economy, right? Because you know, if we're going to build power, then we need to have an economy that can be built around this to move forward.
There's a couple easy ways. One, if you want a job, there's a job opportunity at Table 33 for most of you at least to come in and apply. Doing some of these grassroots efforts, like even like Table 33, if you've ever been, it kind of looks like a grand experience, but it was very grassroots and really, it's a grassroots restaurant. And one of the hardest parts of running that concept specifically is having people who are passionate about people. For us, restaurant isn't, with all of our concepts, it's people over profit. And that's how we are profitable, right? And for us as a business owner now, we actually lose money daily, but that's okay because our equity is, right now we have 34 people whose rent we're paying, whose groceries we're buying, because we're giving them an opportunity. Some of them would have been given that opportunity anywhere, but a lot of our employees may not have, and most likely would not have been given that opportunity. So we're always looking for great employees. Kind of our ideal for Dayton in general, like a dream situation, is that people are known and their gifts are known. So one, just the way you can kind of help with this whole movement is really having a desire to know people exactly where they're at. And if that's a common desire, is knowing people, sorry, I lost my train of thought. If that's one of our common desires, is knowing people, then we can love them better, and it becomes less about us and it's more about us, right? Not us. Less about myself and more about us as a general. So just taking on that mindset is huge. People over profit. And whatever you leave this institution to do, like, take that mindset with you. People over profit. Profit, it's so short-lived. If you go into anything with the idea we just want to make money, it will fail. It's inevitable. And failures, that doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to make tons of money, but it's not going to be fulfilling and it's not going to build up the community. So people over profit. Take on that mindset in whatever you're doing.
Let's do one more.
Yes, please.
So a lot of the issues we've been discussing probably occur more in like the adult sector of the people who are affected. Where do you see children coming into play, and how can they benefit and like engage in being part of the solution? For anyone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of have a couple hats, and one of my hats is out of research of understanding what it means to live in an area of low poverty. One thing that came up was kids that have nothing to do. So we started a after-school program to kind of provide that. Kids experience poverty in a lot of ways, right? Or lack of food access. As far as the ability to concentrate in school, you know. And one thing that I always it's still this. I'm dumbfounded is that like we know that like the role of nutrition and educational attainment, but we say that it's okay in areas that have high poverty to give them super donuts for breakfast and send them to school. Like as like the school breakfast. So everybody in Dayton has access to free food because like the number's so high that you don't want to separate the kids and then have a stigma so that everybody has access to it, you know what I mean? But giving super donuts for breakfast and then wondering why they can't concentrate and they're acting up and all these things, you know? So we was at what was that last week? Thurgood Marshall, and they're exploring a project around food, and hearing their stories, like everything we talked about, like they knew it, you know what I mean? They talked about the 2 buses, you know what I mean? And like and all these things. So like youth are impacted the most by all these systems, you know what I mean? Because they're the most vulnerable. You know what I mean? They're experiencing trauma which impacts their brain development, right? Like all these things are interconnected, you know what I mean? So I think like teaching them how to grow food, teaching them how to cook different food, understanding nutrition, right? How these things work. And I think asking them, you know what I mean? Like what is their experience with food? You know what I mean? Because oftentimes, everybody tries to make decisions for kids, you know what I mean? But I'm a firm believer that You know, youth aren't the leaders of the future. They can be leaders now. Like, they can lead where they're at. They can make change where they're at, right? And it's just giving them the space and capacity to do their things.
I think also youth living in poverty have a greater role in food in their families than folks who are not living in poverty. So I think, like, when I was growing up, I grew up pretty middle class. Like, my parents provided food for me, and, like, you know, I made choices sometimes, but I didn't have to think about where the food came from. And I worked with an after-school program in Hilltop. Similar reason kind of came up because these kids didn't have anything to do. And the kids there, a lot of my older kids, and when I say older, I mean like 8 or 9 sometimes, they're involved in how their younger brothers and sisters eat. So they think about this because they have to think about, like, maybe their mom works all day, and so they have to serve breakfast to their kids and they have to get their younger siblings dinner. Maybe their parents or their families aren't able to engage in that for whatever reason, and so it's kind of their responsibility to make sure everyone's fed. And so when you have an 8-year-old boy providing food, you know, everyone's drinking Kool-Aid and eating hot dogs, and so that impacts nutrition also a lot of times. And I look at our after-school kids, and all of these issues, like Amaha said, they know them. I mean, if you want to talk to kids about food experiences at a very young age, they're going to talk about it using different words than we're using right now. But they've experienced this already. They can talk about it already. They know where their food comes from. They've been involved in it. They're thinking about it. And it's something that they have to face every day. And so I think thinking about kids is integral because it from a very, very, very young age, kids living in poverty, it impacts their lives. It's something they're consciously aware of. And like Amaha said, it impacts everything else about them. If they're not eating well, they're not, you know, their brains aren't developing in the same way. They're going to have future health problems later in life. They're not focusing in school. There's so many challenges that come along with it.
If I can add one thing, I think just having to wonder where your food is coming from, it takes a lot out of you, right? That's a whole next level thing where I'm wondering, am I going to get 3 meals a day? So like when we started our program, like I'm ashamed on one level to say it, but I think like our original success was we provided food. You know what I mean? Like kids came just for the food. You know what I mean? Now they come for other reasons now, right? But the initial thing was I'm gonna get a meal. You know, actually it was 2 meals because it was summertime, right? So it's like lack of access to food is huge for kids, and like that's why they send backpacks home sometimes, right? But it's like having that stress and the trauma of not knowing where you're going to eat, but then still expected to do all these other things and carry the responsibilities. It's like, it's a lot, man. I can't even begin to express it.
The only thing I'd add is also the relationship to food. So I was talking to someone, so Mission to Mary is a program that University of Dayton is, I'm seeing a lot of nods, so I'm assuming a lot of people know about Mission to Mary. University of Dayton is very involved in supporting, and there were a group of kids that were at the garden learning how to grow food, and it was harvest time, so they were harvesting the carrots. And these were like about 11-year-olds maybe, and they didn't want to eat the carrots. And everyone thought, like, of course they're going to want to eat the carrots. They grew it, it's cool, like, they're excited. They're like, no, like, that's gross, it's in the dirt. Like, I don't want to eat it. It's like, well, we'll wash it. And it's like, no, I don't eat things from the dirt. Like, well, where do you think carrots come from? Plastic bag. Because the relationship to food was so removed in this industrial system that Caitlin was talking about, that, like, the concept of growing your own food, like, that might be a fun activity, but I'm not going to eat that gross stuff, even if you're going to wash it. Is because we don't have a relationship to our food. And while we might all joke about that, like that is a fundamental challenge if we're going to actually invest in sustaining local food systems, to actually have a relationship with our food and understand where it comes from, and understand what the conditions are of the workers who grow our food, and what the conditions are of the workers who deliver our food, and the ones who serve our food, and all of that is part of it, and then the environment that sustains it. So I would just say that, like, kids, there's an opportunity, like, yeah, the 5-year-olds, like, love eating the dirty carrots. Like, that's a very different thing. But the 11-year-olds, not so much. So where are we starting those relationships, and how can we foster that and change our understanding?
I love that. One of the foundational principles that Table 33 specifically is built around is helping develop that relationship, not just for children, but for everyone. We focus on not only using the highest ingredients, the quality ingredients possible, but as locally sourced as possible as well. So creating that relationship, because it's not just a child thing or a kid thing. Like 5 years ago, I didn't know where my food came from, right? And that's just what we grew up in, and there's just been a huge awareness to people want to develop that relationship, and definitely starting it with kids. Specifically, what we're doing at Table 33, we've done it for the last 6 months, is kids eat free at Table 33. Being a locally sourced restaurant, if you've eaten at farm-to-table restaurants, not just in Dayton but anywhere, they can be more expensive. We are more expensive than a lot of the restaurants downtown. It is kind of the system that we're caught in, and that's one of the reasons we want to start helping grow and prop up some of our own gardens in these communities. But we have kids eat free at Table 33, and so that's one way we connect. And another way that we've actively connect is not only developing the relationship of where the food is coming from, but developing the relationship of how they handle it, how they make it. And so we've this summer we did a handful of summer camps with the YWCA and had culinary classes with the kids, taking basic ingredients that you might even be able to find in like a Stop and Save downtown or some of these corner markets, just some basic ingredients, and helping them be creative in developing healthy meals, because like you said, these kids are literally having not to come up with food for themselves, but in a lot of cases for their entire family. We literally, especially with the YWCA, we're dealing with these young girls from the ages of 11 to probably 16 in our summer camps, and most of these girls are responsible for not only cooking for themselves but also their parents, because a lot of their parents are lazy and their parents are okay not eating or not feeding their kids. Their parents are taking care of themselves, whatever the situation might be. So creating that relationship with the food and then how to handle it is so important, and that's and we love being part of that effort.
I would respectfully say I don't know if everybody's lazy, but
Not lazy.
sorry, I could.
Yeah, for sure.
You good? But yeah, working. Yeah.
No, I got you, Phil.
Okay. All right. So we've been the great beneficiaries of lots of information and knowledge over the course of the last hour. And before we break out, I want to spend a couple of minutes, and I want you to identify the person that is closest with you, and I want you to ask the other and answer for each other the question: what was the most striking thing you learned today? Okay, what was the most striking thing you learned today? I mean here, I don't mean wherever you came from before. I mean here. What is the most striking thing you learned here? Turn to the person next to you, and let's do this for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll share out to see where we got to today.
Yeah, like it's a huge process, but it seems like over the past 3 years, like we spent a lot of stuff happening, so that was really cool.
And also, just like he said, when you see things from the store, you can get home and say, and I'm not new, so I didn't know that city was literally teaching that each one has like this is the interesting time.
I'm kind of outside of but I know about the splitting of the cities and all that, and it's just interesting to talk about it because the thing about the fact that the West Side is nothing there, and you said there's opportunities to make money there, and now they're starting to see it there. I like that. Still big problem in the future. Obviously, you have to be working against something like that.
Well, I think it's hard to do like all this first starting and stuff, because I think once you start
exactly.
so hopefully Jem will be part of that, kind of thing that show how to
Exactly.
It's hard to balance stuff. What classes are you guys in?
I'm in excess something, it's about food.
Yeah. Sustainable environment. Okay. And I'm in the HSC.
I want to give us some time to share the conversation with everybody.
What's your name?
So let's have a quick thing. I'm not going to pass the microphone around, but I'm interested to hear, and I hope that you share with the rest of us, what are some of the more striking things that you learned today? Who'd like to share? Yeah. Loudly, who'd like to share loudly? Please.
So I'm basically from India. So one striking thing that I've known today is that US as well has food crisis. That I seriously didn't know that.
Thank you very much. That's awesome. That's excellent. Thank you. What's the most striking thing you learned today? Somebody else. Yes.
I guess I kind of was aware of the food crisis in the Dayton area, but the statistic that really stood out to me was there's one Kroger for 40,000 people. I think that's just insanely striking to hear, and that's like the only option that is available to them.
It's actually outside the city of Dayton. I think that's important to know. Just it is available to people, but there isn't actually a Kroger on the west side in the city limits. It's in Harrison Township.
It's on the border.
Yeah.
But still, it's not in Dayton.
Yeah.
Right.
So just for everybody, the most striking thing that Katie learned was, even if we were aware somewhat of the crisis of access for food in Dayton, that there was one Kroger, not even officially in the city of Dayton, available by, in some places, 2 buses for 40,000 residents. So that's an important, very sort of distilling, right? It's like if you wanted to explain the problem to a person, maybe you'd use that statistic. Thank you, Katie. Couple more. Most striking thing, yeah, Katie.
Just like the history of redlining and how it's led like directly to this now, and how the lack of resources led to
Excellent, right? And so Caitlin just reinforced and was struck by the history of redlining and how the history of redlining is still very much with us, and we can sort of see its legacy in many different areas, food being a really important one. 2 more. Yes?
Usually, like, even if you buy your clothes or bag or anything, at least you spend a minute or 2 to think on it, which one to buy or not. And the startling thing is, when you come to food, you don't even think anything, and you just unconsciously consume a lot of food, like where does it come from, is it hygienic or not? And that was the most startling thing which I found out today.
Thank you so much. Well put. 2 more. I know I said 2 more, but I still want to.
You're so good.
Yeah.
One thing I really love is that, like, you know, a lot of times people run into an issue and they want somebody to come in and then help them out to solve this problem. Is that we can see people, and you guys are a great example of this, is that people are stepping up essentially to say, hey, we're going to solve this issue on our own.
That's just me clapping.
All right, one more. Yeah.
Like even when there are like good actors like who are small business owners who want to provide healthy options for their communities, like there isn't even like an economic benefit really. Like at best they're hoping to break even in terms of providing those opportunities for their own communities.
That's excellent, right? So it's not even the case that the small business owner, the corner store is trying to get over on you. It's just that they don't, because of their own capacity, have the capability of having better offerings. And so these sort of like structural dimensions are all the way from the sort of corporate multinationals, and they flow down to the local corner stores.
So the thing is, it's how we define break even too. If we look at the real and true cost of this inequity, it's much greater than the little loss in profit here. If there was some way to pay forward instead of pay back, you know, at the end, you could have impact on this.
Right on. Yeah, please.
I'd say the coolest thing for me today is that you guys are actually stepping up and doing something, because I live in Dayton, I've lived in Dayton my entire life, and I've experienced some of the things you guys are talking about, so like actually seeing that someone's doing something about it is like pretty cool.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm going to end on that. So please join me in thanking our speakers and our guests today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your attention and your contribution. I have no homework for you because most of you are not my students.
Turn up.
I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you stay warm. I hope you stay safe. Thank you so much for being here.
Ground and C250. You say my energy in the environment. I'm into introduction to human rights.
There's like a international.
Yes, yeah, the weather. The weather.
So hydroponic stuff with the food bank that then we can have.
No, I'm looking at human rights studies program. I'm a teacher though.
I do too.
I saw you the other day.
Hey, so one of our takeaways everyone should talk about rights. Coming up with ways to improve the relationship. What do you think of some people that have power in decision? I think that's something we can try to help. My personal interest in money or in the past when we've done this GEMnasium thing, we haven't really started with an impactful event. By the way, we are recording this, and I'll send MP4 to everyone. Okay. So that not everybody can hear, but we have Oh, I actually was thinking to make some big printouts of both the map and the food.
So the slide has one of them, but even just some.
Oh, your slide has both.
Yes, it does. It has next to each other, but also some clips of the notes, which I don't know if my slides did, of like how they made the determinations, because they're just really striking. It's like, favorable.
Not Monday. Monday's off.
Things, and then it's like the tools, the neighborhoods, whatever. Detrimental. You have to go through Negro community to get to access. See, like it's ridiculous.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
I have hesitated to kind of reach out to you in detail before Christmas, but we have some support for the college.
Okay.
Provided, so at the end of the semester, we're going to move into the summer. Kind of then
We need the third
transition, whatever key ideas and key themes emerge from the semester into the summer. And we actually have support from somebody in the summer that somebody to help do this transition. And so like Chris is like permission faculty. What is that role?
I would love to talk to you about that, yeah. I would definitely need to talk to Rick, my boss, about what that might look like, but so I was like, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and that could, the way I see somebody like Etana or Amaha serving that role is not to be in a separate class, you know, but to be kind of co-design and co-creators in a lot of times. I would feel better about all the time we suck up if they were compensated. Yeah, let's make that work. No, so there is compensation.
Okay.
So, oh, that's right. Yeah, I know that. So, you know, it's really for your time. Yeah, that was one thing that, when Brian told me it was compensation, we didn't exactly talk about this in the text. So, yeah, so it has to lead into the summer. We continue and kind of be part of whatever happens this summer. All of us are working on kind of not for everyone, but our engineering teams are informed by
Half the business so high, half the engineering background, like
I think I can just run that into my PC, or do you have to have a special card for something like that?
No,
What is it?
I know.
It's just a video camera. Wouldn't it have stored it digitally? It's already an MP4, I would imagine.
Yeah, you can either hardwire it, or if there's a card that comes out, you might have a card reader.
I think I'm going to download it and just send copies out to the...
Do you know how to stop? It's 36 minutes left.
Oh yeah, well, it's done. We're done.
Yeah, we're done.